Brew Watch Company have recently released their most compact watch yet, the Brew Metric Lite. It's small, but it's not to be overlooked, and I think it's one of the perfect examples of how Brew give you more than just a watch. We'll get into exactly what I mean by that a little bit later on, but first, let's dive straight into its features. The most noticeable feature for me is the squared shape of the case. I'm not typically drawn towards square watches, but on the Metric Lite, I don't think I'd want it any other way. The case is a gold-coloured stainless steel which looks fantastic and feels solid, and we have brushed steel on the lugs and sides of the case with some polishing along the edges. The back of the case has a beautiful screw-down exhibition caseback where you can see the watch's movement. The movement being a Miyota automatic 6T27 movement, a small, fairly standard movement from Miyota, so nothing too fancy to shout about. It features a 40-hour power reserve with an accuracy of -20 to +40 seconds a day, which isn't too bad. It's pretty simple and it gets the job done. Plus, it looks great through this little exhibition caseback. And back onto the caseback quickly, I wanted to mention that this is one of the things that I found really appealing when looking at this watch online, and it really impresses in person. It's gold in colour, a mix of polished and brushed steel, and looks fantastic with the screws in the corners. This caseback is really something special and clearly well considered by the watch's designer. Size-wise, the case is 30mm in diameter, 34mm lug to lug, and 10.55mm thick, which is nice and compact while still giving the watch a solid silhouette from the side. Back onto the front, and we have this really pronounced square-shaped bezel boldly protruding out from the case. Inside the bezel and just poking out over the surface is a sapphire glass crystal, so nice and solid and scratch resistant. There doesn't appear to be any anti-reflective coating, but we can't have everything. Just below the crystal and around the edges of the bezel, we have this gold-coloured mirrored surface, and sunken down to a satisfying depth, we have a black dial with the Brew coffee bean logo embossed at the 3 o'clock position. We have polished applied hour markers, so nice and legible even on the small watch face, and the vintage-looking hands are baton style with black lines down the middle and a strip of loom down each one. The seconds hand has a lollipop design to it, again bringing back that retro feel, calling back to watch designs from the mid-20th century. The loom doesn't last a huge amount of time, but even in the dark you can appreciate the thought that's gone into its design, as the loom dots above the hour markers create a satisfying circle with the loom hands visible in the middle. We're about to move on to other features I love about this watch, but before we do, if you're loving this video, please do consider subscribing and turning on your notifications. Moving away from the watch face now, we have this sturdy, integrated style bracelet. At this price point, some watches have a tendency to cheap out on bracelets, and they sometimes feel like a bit of an afterthought, in my opinion. That's not the case here. This bracelet has, again, a mix of brushed steel and polished finishing, and is clearly a continuation of the slick design seen in the rest of the watch. It has a folding clasp with the minimalist coffee bean logo on the back, and micro adjustments for resizing. It's comfortable on the wrist, and in my experience, there has been no hair pulling whatsoever. Now, before I discuss the relevance of the size of this watch, I want to discuss the experience of having this watch. It can sound a bit pretentious when people start talking about the experience of a watch, but I think in this case, there really is something intriguing beyond the watch itself. Now, this watch comes in a very nice box. It's presented beautifully, and included is a little tool for resizing the watch yourself. And then you have this booklet, which has really nice photos and goes over the watch's design, its features, and how to use it. And for someone like me, who looks and talks about watches a lot, is quite easily overlooked. But what Brew have done here is really create, as I said, a bit of an experience. Personally, I took the watch out of the box and it was a bit too big, so I resized it immediately using the provided tool. Then I had a look through the book and I learned about the design inspirations and the features of the watch, and this process reminded me of my first watch and how I got into watches myself. My love for watches all started with a little bit of tinkering and curiosity. And that's what the Metric Lite watch provides, the opportunity to really dig into and enjoy a watch. You can learn about how it works, its origins, and do some minor adjustments yourself, and it's something I really appreciate. And that's why I think this watch would actually be an excellent gift for somebody who's just dipping their little toes into the world of mechanical watches. And speaking of little, let's take another look at the size, shall we? As I said, this watch is 30mm in diameter and 34mm lug to lug. It's quite small. I did a bit of research and I couldn't really find any modern day mechanical watches at this size and this price. I found quite a few women's watches, but no, not really anything for men. But this Metric Lite is unisex. In Brew's marketing videos, they show it being worn by a man and a woman, and I think it can suit either. But anyway, the reason I bring up size is, for me, I like small vintage style watches, and I wish more brands would go down this path. I recently borrowed these two 1960s watches from my granddad. We've got a Roma and an Ingersoll. They're small, not quite 30mm, but I love how they subtly fit on my wrist when I wear them, and they're a reminder of an era when watches were actually practical tools. And I get the same feeling when I'm wearing the Brew Metric Lite. And that's what I really like about this watch. They're not only going for the vintage watch design, which they have, and it's great, they're going a step further and giving it a vintage size, and I think other brands should be braver and follow suit. I call this video the small watch nobody is talking about. And that isn't because it's boring and people aren't interested and therefore aren't talking about it. It's because I find this watch so intriguing, and for me, I find that it's generally been quite overlooked since it was released, and it's overlooked in the world of watches and within Brew's solid catalogue of watches as well. People have been loving the Brew chronograph watches, and rightly so. I want one for myself, but I think this simple little watch deserves a lot more attention and a lot more love. I think this watch was a brave decision by Brew, and a watch that will age excellently within their lineup. And for me, it's a real reminder that Brew's watches are definitely made by people who love watches. But I'd love to know, what do you think? Do you like the size? Is it just too small? Do you wish there were more watches out there at this size? Let me know in the comments. And that's it. Thanks for watching. If you're new here, please do subscribe, and I'll see you next time.